All right, I want to welcome everyone to our live Saturday morning presentation. Again, as you can see by my screen, we're going to be talking about the importance of vitamin D. And we're specifically going to look at vitamin D in relationship to two areas, your cardiovascular health and your immune system. And I especially want to focus on the immune system because most people don't associate vitamin D with regards to the immune system. But with the COVID-19 virus, there's some important observational studies that have come out that really bring this to the attention of the public, as well as the need for making sure that your vitamin D levels are proper. Now, before we get into that information, let's just understand some background on vitamin D. There's typically two forms of vitamin D that you can get at like a health food store from a supplementation standpoint, or you can get from nature in terms of the foods that you eat. The first one is called vitamin D2. It's found in plants, and this is the hard form for your body to convert. So when you come to supplementation, in fact, I had a client yesterday who was a new client, got onto ProArts 9 Plus, and one of her concerns was, again, the vitamin D3. Her physician had recommended that she get a vitamin D2 because she's a vegetarian. And as I shared with her, vitamin D2 is extremely difficult for your body to convert into vitamin D in your bloodstream. The best form is always going to be vitamin D3, which is found in animals. Now, typically, the way that manufacturers produce vitamin D3 is they take the lanolin from the sheep's wool and then through a chemical process convert that to vitamin D3. And as I was sharing with the lady yesterday, whether you're vegan or vegetarian, you need to understand that no sheep are killed in this process and you're not eating sheep. You know, it's just like having a dog as a pet. You know, when your dog's hair gets too long, you take it to the pet groomer and they cut the dog's hair. And it's the same thing with sheep. You're actually doing sheep a favor by shearing the wool off the sheep. And then what they do is they take the wool, they wash out the lanolin, and then the lanolin is used to produce vitamin D3. So for a vegan or a vegetarian, you're not consuming an animal or an animal. I suppose you could look at it as an animal byproduct, but it's not because the animal was killed or injured in any kind of way. So you have to understand that if you really want to use supplementation to increase your vitamin D levels, you've got to use vitamin D3. Now, the way it works in your body is your liver and kidneys are involved in it. And I have this graphic here. You'll get it in the PDF. You can see that typically for a lot of people, you know, sunlight helps to create vitamin D in the bloodstream. Unfortunately, the darker your skin color, the less the penetration of the light, the sunlight, so the less the ability to create vitamin D. That's why you see in population groups that have darker skins, typically their vitamin D levels are lower in their bloodstream. And we're going to talk about why that's important as we look at what's going on with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, if you're using a supplement, vitamin D3, well, the liver first converts it to one form of vitamin D, and then the kidneys convert it to the final form, which is the form that the body needs for the cells to be able to utilize vitamin D throughout your whole body. And it's amazing the number of receptor sites that are in your body that are specific for vitamin D to be able to help those functions occur properly. Now, when we look at numbers, it's really important to understand normal, insufficient, and deficiency with regards to vitamin D. Normal would be anyone who has 30 nanograms per milliliter or higher. Insufficient would be those that run from 21 to 29 nanograms per milliliter, and deficient would be anyone who's less than 20 nanograms per milliliter. A study was done in 2011 looking at the US population, and what they found was that basically 42% of the adults in the US population are vitamin D deficient. That means that they have less than 20 nanograms per milliliter in their bloodstream. Now, it didn't look at insufficiency. You know, if you looked at insufficient, you'd most likely see this percentage go even higher. But just from a vitamin D deficient standpoint, 42% of US adults in the 2011 study were vitamin D deficient. But when you broke that down based upon skin color or ethnicity, it was a really significant increase. For Hispanics, that jumped to 69% of Hispanics are vitamin D deficient. And when you look at the African American population, it's 82%. And independently, I looked at another study with regards to Native Americans, and 2/3 of the Native American population, or 66%, are vitamin D deficient. Now, that becomes a big issue because when you're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, you're seeing that it has a greater effect in certain ethnic populations like Black people, like Hispanic people, like the Native Americans, where their symptom severity and their mortality rate are significantly higher than you're seeing in other population groups. And so it's important to understand that your vitamin D is extremely important for your immune system. It's a key component in the activation of your immune system defenses. Specifically, vitamin D enhances the function of your T cells and your macrophages to protect your body against pathogens. It helps the communication process occur properly in your immune system. And this is important because typically viruses and cancer, the way that they're able to survive in your body is that they take over the communication system of the immune system, especially a weak immune system. And what they're able to do when they take over the communication is they're able to mask themselves as beneficial and healthy cells as not. And so what happens is your immune system begins to attack your healthy cells and leaves the bad cells alone. But when you can maintain proper communication within your immune system by the use of vitamin D3 or by the use of vitamin D, then that communication system is not fooled. And it can then take and see the viruses as the enemy and your healthy cells as the friendly cells. And so they attack the viruses and the cancer cells to eliminate them through the macrophages and the T cells. Now, I also found this to be extremely important. When you look at low levels of vitamin D, they are associated with the following respiratory diseases: tuberculosis, asthma, COPD, viral respiratory infections, and bacterial respiratory infections. And when you look at COVID-19, the area that it causes the greatest significant problem is in the lungs. That's a respiratory infection. And so again, low levels of vitamin D, they're associated with these different aspects. I found the asthma to be very interesting because there's a lot of people who have asthma issues. It would be interesting for them to go get a blood test, and a specific blood test to measure vitamin D levels in their bloodstream, and they might find that their vitamin D levels are low, insufficient, or deficient. And if they brought their vitamin D levels back up, they would have a better ability not to have symptoms from their asthma. When we go on here, there's plenty of research which shows that the lower your vitamin D level is, the greater the probability that you're going to end up with diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. Now, we're going to look at specifically in the cardiovascular disease area in just a little bit. But there's plenty of emerging science that's coming out on this COVID-19 and vitamin D deficiency. And I want to focus on one specific study. It came out of Indonesia. It's called Patterns of COVID-19 Mortality in Vitamin D, an Indonesian study. They looked at 780 cases, people who had COVID-19. Half of those cases had normal vitamin D levels. The other half were either insufficient in vitamin D or deficient in vitamin D. And as you can see by this table, when you look at the death rate, if you had normal vitamin D levels, your death rate outcome was 4%, meaning 4 out of 100 people would die. But if you had insufficient vitamin D levels, the death rate was 88%. 88 people out of 100 would die. And if you were deficient in your vitamin D levels, 99% death rate, meaning 99 people out of 100 would die. Now, it's not a small difference. This is a huge difference. This is like walking into a dark room and flipping the lights on. That's how significant this is. If you, again, have normal vitamin D levels, it's a 4% death rate. But if you're insufficient or deficient, you're looking at 88 to 99%. Huge. And this could be one of the reasons why African American populations, Black populations, Hispanic populations, Native American populations have been more significantly affected by the COVID-19 virus. Now, this does not mean, and I want to make this clear, this does not mean that if your vitamin D levels are normal, you will not get the COVID-19 virus. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that your symptom severity and your outcome is significantly improved if your vitamin D levels are at least normal or above normal. Now, with this whole aspect, you can actually do a Google search if you want to, but I pulled some research, and if you do a Google search, what I used for my Google search was COVID-19 and vitamin D. And you're going to see plenty of observational studies that show this relationship between symptom severity and lack of vitamin D. So what I have here, and again, this will be in the PDF that you'll have access to. What I give you is the title of the study. I give you the summary statement of that study, and then I'll give you a direct link to that study if you want to go into any greater depth and detail. So you can see that vitamin D insufficiency is prevalent in severe COVID-19. And then when you go down to this one, the possible role of vitamin D in suppressing cytokine storm and associated mortality in COVID-19 patients. Again, for those that had higher levels of vitamin D, you saw less problems with this cytokine storm. Okay, so I have a person who put in the chat box, vitamin D is fat soluble and caution should be used when taking vitamin D. So my comment to that is, yes, you're completely correct that vitamin D is fat soluble, but the caution in using vitamin D, we'll come and talk about that towards the end of presentation here, because the amount that is recommended by the US government is woefully inadequate, is too low. And so we want to look at what amount would be correct for a person who wanted to make sure that their vitamin D levels were proper. And we're going to base this upon respected organizations that have a different take on this vitamin D than what, say, the federal government does. The federal government looks at the smallest amount to protect you from illness as opposed to the ideal amount that you need for optimal health. So there's a big difference when we come to those two things. And we'll look at this in a little bit more greater depth and detail towards the end of presentation. Now, the only study that I could find that does not support this relationship between vitamin D and symptom severity of the COVID-19 was from England, was the study here where they found it's from Oxford, where they found no clinical evidence on vitamin D in COVID-19. There was no evidence related to vitamin D deficiency predisposing to COVID-19, nor were there studies of supplementation to prevent or treating COVID-19. Now, Oxford is going to most likely need to change this statement because there's an active ongoing study in the UK that is preliminarily showing that that statement is not true. But again, it's a preliminary study and it's not yet been put out into the general public. But you have all these other ones that are showing that, like here, evidence that vitamin D supplementation could reduce risk of influenza and COVID-19 infections and death. And they, in that study, they actually looked at specific amounts of daily intake of vitamin D, ranging from 5,000 international units per day to 10,000 international units per day. And then there was the role of vitamin D in prevention of coronavirus disease, 2019 infections and mortality. Again, this was done over in the European population. And again, they're seeing a significant correlation between adverse vitamin D levels and protection towards the COVID-19 virus. And then you have this last one here. Yes, your last one here that I have in this PDF. COVID-19 deaths are being linked to vitamin D deficiency. Here's what that means. And again, it's a good overview report with regards to the things that I'm sharing with you today. Now, vitamin D is also important for your cardiovascular health. And it's important in a couple different ways. And there's some new studies that have come out that shows that by optimizing your vitamin D intake, you can help to prevent both heart disease and strokes. Now, what's the #1 killer of men and women worldwide? Heart disease. I think stroke, if I remember correctly, is either #4 or #5 on the list of causes of death. So how does it work? It works by improving endothelial function and reducing arterial stiffness. I got another one. Okay. So vitamin D does this by increasing your endothelium's ability to create nitric oxide. Nitric oxide dilates your blood vessels to improve blood flow. Most everyone that's on today's presentation is familiar with nitric oxide and the importance of nitric oxide in dilating your vascular system to improve blood flow. Specific to your endothelium, the enzymatic production of nitric oxide is done by what's called the eNOS enzyme. That enzyme and its ability to create nitric oxide is what's called a calcium-dependent reaction, meaning that if calcium's not present, the reaction of conversion of L-arginine to nitric oxide can't occur or is significantly reduced. And that's one of the reasons why the combination of vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 is so important, because vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 help to regulate calcium levels in the bloodstream. Vitamin K2 helps to make sure that calcium stays in the bones. Vitamin D3 helps to make sure that calcium is absorbed and put into the bones. And then the vitamin K2 acts as the traffic cop to direct calcium out of the bones to areas where it needs. So it helps, this combination helps to regulate your calcium levels in your bloodstream, which then becomes extremely important for the proper function of the eNOS enzyme that's part of your endothelium that is necessary to convert L-arginine into nitric oxide. Now, what they found in their study, this study was from the Nanomedical Research Laboratory at Ohio University, is that there's a relationship in this aspect of vitamin D on two specific substances. Nitric oxide. So to make this easy for us to understand, I want to bring simplicity to this aspect, is that nitric oxide is good. We all know that. And then this other thing called peroxynitrite, I don't know if I said that correctly, that's bad. And so what they did in their study is they caused a problem with the function of the endothelium. And when that endothelium became dysfunctional, there was a decrease in nitric oxide and an increase in this peroxynitrite. Well, when vitamin D was introduced, that was significantly reversed, where there was a tenfold increase in nitric oxide production and a tenfold decrease in peroxynitrite. So what happened is you had a tenfold increase in the good molecule that you want for vascular health, and you had a tenfold decrease in the bad molecule that causes arterial stiffness and 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 damage to the vascular system through inflammation. So this is a very important study that was just recently done that again shows the importance of vitamin D. So the question comes to this: how much vitamin D do you need to see a benefit? So there's a 2016 study that actually looked at this, and they gave their participants in that study 2,000 international units per day. And then when they compared their baseline readings to their final results, they saw an 18% drop in arterial stiffness, an 8.2% decrease in systolic blood pressure, and a 9.1% decrease in diastolic blood pressure. So it helps to bring people's blood pressure numbers back towards the normal range, and it definitely saw an improvement in what's called arterial stiffness. And there's other studies that are out there now that show that vitamin D supplements reduce arterial stiffness and blood pressure and lowers the risk for both strokes and heart attacks. So when it comes to how much vitamin D do you need to consume on a daily basis, I put this chart together. This was actually taken from information from the Cleveland Clinic. I give you the exact link. You can click on this live URL when you get your PDF. You can go to the article from the Cleveland Clinic, and what they didn't have is they didn't have this highlighted in yellow. I did that myself personally. Most of the people on today's presentation are between the ages of 90 and 70. You know, most of us are, I would assume, 50 and older. And you can see that from the government's standpoint, the daily dietary allowance is 600 to 800 international units. That's what our government's telling us that we need from a daily allowance. But when you look at the Cleveland study or the Cleveland Clinic, their upper level intake is 4,000 international units on a daily basis. So it's the difference between minimum to optimizing your health benefits from vitamin D. And I'm going to introduce the Vitamin D Society because they're even more aggressive with regards to the amount of vitamin D that you need on a daily basis, but we'll get to that in just a second. So if you look at the Synergy Worldwide products that we have and how we can get vitamin D into our system through those products, there's two that are important. And before we look at them, we need to understand a conversion equation. Synergy Worldwide used to list their vitamin D levels in international units. About a year and a half ago, the federal government changed labeling laws. And so in the change of the labeling laws, they now report vitamin D not in relationship to international units, but what are called micrograms. And so you need to know the conversion factor. 1 IU is the biological equivalent of 0.025 micrograms of vitamin D. In Pro Arginine Plus, as we all know, it has a large number of ingredients that are specifically designed to optimize nitric oxide production by the eNOS enzymes of your endothelium. And one of those ingredients is 40 micrograms of vitamin D3, which equals 1,600 international units of vitamin D3. So for every stick that you take of vitamin D3, or if you're using the jumbo jar, for every scoop out of the jumbo jar of vitamin or of Pro Arginine Plus, I should say, or every packet that you tear off of the boxes where you have your powder of the Pro Arginine Plus in the packet, per serving, you're getting 1,600 international units of vitamin D3. Now, the other product that Synergy has is their chewable vitamin D3. And it is one of the most cost-effective ways to get your vitamin D3 into your system to be converted to vitamin D. The cost is $18 per bottle. The serving size is 2 chewable tablets. They give you 75 servings per bottle, which would be 150 tablets. So if you're looking based on cost on serving, where you're doing 2 of them on a daily basis, you're talking 24 cents per day. Or if you're just doing 1 tablet, your cost is 12 cents per day. And each tablet is 62.5 micrograms of vitamin D3, which would be the equivalent of 2,500 international units of vitamin D3. This is so cost effective. This is one of the most cost effective ways for a person to help increase their vitamin D levels in their bloodstream and then be able to enjoy the health benefits that come from vitamin D. Now, if we set some goals, if the goal is to use the Cleveland Clinic guidelines of 4,000 international units on a daily basis, then 1 packet of Pro-Arginine Plus, which gives you 1,600 international units, and 1 chewable vitamin D3, which gives you 2,500, that would give you a total of 4,100 international units on a daily basis and would be very close to the Cleveland Clinic's recommendation for optimal intake of vitamin D3. And the best way to take this would be to take your Pro-Arginine Plus first thing in the morning and then take your vitamin D chewable just prior to dinner. And split them that way, because you do not want to take all of your vitamin D3 at one time, because you're not going to get maximum absorption that way. You want to spread it out. You want to spread it out where you have it with a meal so that you can use the fats that are in your meal to help aid in the absorption. The other nice thing about the chewable is, as I've seen, and I don't have this in here with regards to links to studies, but if you do a chewable vitamin D3 supplement as opposed to a tablet, you'll get better absorption because you start absorbing it immediately in the mouth through the salivary glands, which then helps you get it into your bloodstream faster for better benefits. Now, there's another organization called the Vitamin D Society. They recommend 10,000 international units on a daily basis. So if you're going to use something from the Pro-Arginine Plus and the vitamin D chewables from Synergy Worldwide, if you're taking 2 packets per day, you're getting 3,200 international units, and 2 tablets would give you another 5,000. So a combination of 2 packets of Pro-Arginine Plus with 2 tablets of the chewable vitamin D, that would give you 8,200 international units. Not quite at the level that they recommend, but certainly twice the amount that you're seeing from the Cleveland Clinic. Now, I was on a program yesterday about vitamin D3, vitamin D, and a question was asked to me, well, how can I get it from food? And it's difficult to get vitamin D levels from food because it's not typically the types of things that people eat. So here are the best sourcing for food. Salmon, whether it be fresh or farmed, you can see that there's a significant difference. If it's fresh, wild, then it varies in a 3.5 ounce piece of fresh salmon. If it's wild, you're getting somewhere between 400 to 1,000 international units. Well, let's say that you're at 1,000 international units because that's really good fresh salmon that you're eating. And you would need then to take 3.5 times 4, 14. You'd need to eat almost a pound of salmon to be able to get 4,000 international units in the best shot. Now, if you're using farmed salmon, you can see that it's 100 to 250 international units. again, if you're looking to increase your vitamin D levels in your bloodstream, you can try and do the food, but it's so much more cost effective and easier to use a chewable vitamin D3 supplement. And if you're looking at fortified milk, 8 ounces, that's 100 international units. So that would mean 10 times 4. I'd have to drink 40 8-ounce glasses. That's 320 ounces. Now, I don't, that most likely be at least a gallon of milk on a daily basis just to be able to get that. Yeah, again, you're not going to do it. You know, you're not going to do it from an expense standpoint. You're not going to do it because you don't want to do it, because you're not going to drink that much milk. Just like you most likely don't eat salmon on a daily basis. The easiest and most effective, cost-effective way to get your vitamin D into your bloodstream is to use a chewable vitamin D3 supplement. And then I give you a direct link to the benefits page for vitamin D3 on the Vitamin D Society. This will take you to, they have some really significant information on that page, especially in relationship that if people had what they recommend as optimal vitamin D levels, and you'll notice that in parentheses, what they recommend for optimal vitamin D levels is somewhere between 100 to 150 nanomoles per liter. Now, I haven't converted that to what you would see with regards to a blood test. I should have done that. But they are significantly higher in what they believe is the optimal level. In fact, that optimal level would cause some physicians to have concerns. Well, again, I'll let you go and read their information, but as you can see, this last line, vitamin D interacts with over 3,000 genes. That's almost all of your gene pool. That's how significant vitamin D is to the function of your body. So hopefully this information is helpful to you. If you have questions, you can always email me or call me. And with that, I'll take any kind of questions that people might have on today's presentation. You'll have to go in and unmute yourself, and then I can take your question. Or you can type them in the chat box. Since I already have one here, let's see what that says. All right, so Edward says 8,000 to 10,000 international units per day of vitamin D3. Again, you're going to find a wide range of people who are going to tell you what your recommended amount should be. But again, this is why in today's presentation, I'm giving you the Cleveland Clinic and the Vitamin D Society, because they both represent different perspectives on that spectrum of how much vitamin D should you take. The Cleveland Clinic, from a medical standpoint, is one of the most respected health organizations in the United States. And so from their perspective, they're certainly much higher than what the government recommends, and they would put it at 4,000. And again, if you go to the Vitamin D Society, their amount that they would recommend is significantly higher, at least twice as much as what the Cleveland Clinic would recommend. Anyone else with any questions or comments with regards to the information that was shared with you today? Again, you'll have to go in and unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead, Charity.
Yeah, hi, thank you for that presentation. It's really useful. One thing I've noticed is that the packet of the Puragi 9 Plus that we have in the UK states vitamin D as one of the ingredients. It doesn't specify it as vitamin D3. Is it different from American labeling?
Well, the only way that we'll find out is, because I'm not familiar with what they have. Let's see if we can get that cleared up. So you can go to the Synergy website. You can click onto the UK. Let's go to products.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to, I'm going to refresh this because sometimes if you don't refresh it, it'll stay with the US. Let's look
Okay.
and see if they give you the ingredient list for it. Okay, supplemental facts.
Mhm.
Let me see if I can blow that up. And
Mm.
all right, so the variation. So you can see that there's a variation in the UK. You can see that the UK is in. I'd have to go back and because you have this listed as 5 UG, and I'd have to
Yeah.
go and see what the conversion of that is. Um, I know that they don't list it as vitamin D3. I've got to believe that that's what Synergy would be using. And again, you have to understand that over in Europe,
Yeah.
there are certain things that they um, have to comply with from a labeling standpoint, as well as from what they can put in their ingredient profile for ProArgent Plus that might be slightly different than what we have here in the U.S. Um, so, but again, I would highly doubt that Synergy Worldwide would be using vitamin D2 as opposed to vitamin D3. It would
Yeah.
make absolutely no sense to me for them to do that because they're using vitamin D3 in the US formulation and other ones. So I would assume it's just vitamin, and maybe they can't list it as vitamin D3 over in Europe. I don't know. But that would be a
Maybe.
question that you would most likely need to send into Synergy Worldwide UK. You know,
Yeah.
your customer support and see if you can get an answer from them.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan, this is Bob.
Yes, Bob.
I was noticing on some of the older uh, um, proarginine labels under the supplement facts, it shows vitamin D3 as 62 micrograms per serving.
Mm-hmm.
Was that changed from 62 to 40?
So I assume it was, Bob, because you know when we some of the older the original version of ProArgent Plus, and I'm not sure when the change occurred. I just recently noticed the change, um, and I and I'm only going to give you an opinion here because I don't know this to be true. All right, so I'm giving you an opinion, and
Sure.
you know what opinions are. Um, I know that there's been some issues because if it was 62, it used to be listed as 62.5 micrograms. And let's back up. Originally, when ProAgent Plus was brought out, it was listed, the vitamin D was listed as 2,500 international units of vitamin
Right.
D3.
Right.
And then about a year and a half ago, when they had to change their label to be compliant with the U.S. labeling laws, it was changed from 2,500 international units of vitamin D3 to 62.5 micrograms. Well, 62.5 micrograms, when you do the conversion, is 2,500 international units of vitamin D3. Now, if a person's taking, because some people do this, if a person's taking 4 servings of ProArgent Plus on a daily basis, they're actually then getting 10,000 international units of vitamin D3. And my gut feeling is that they most likely looked at that and felt that they were, for people who are aggressive with ProArgent Plus, were most likely putting themselves at that point where they could get too much vitamin D in their bloodstream, and too much vitamin D also has some no has some health concerns. By bringing it down to 40 micrograms, now you again are at that 1,600 international units. So even if a person did 4 scoops on a daily basis, the most that they would be taking in is 6,400 international units of vitamin D3, the well within what would be considered to be the high end of the norm. Like if you looked at the Cleveland Clinic, it would be at the, it would be above what they would recommend, but not overly aggressive to what they would recommend. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to make one other assumption here, is that by lowering the vitamin D levels, they didn't see any drop off in the effectiveness of Proargin Plus to create nitric oxide, which is what this product, Proargin Plus, is specifically designed to do. You know, the Proargin Plus is not designed to increase our vitamin D levels. That's a side benefit. Proargin Plus is specifically designed to create nitric oxide. And so if they're able to lower the vitamin D level without affecting its ability, Proargin Plus, to create nitric oxide, then that allows them to be in greater compliance on the vitamin D levels so that they don't have a person whose vitamin D levels get above the 100 level of in a blood test measurement. So it's that aspect of making sure that the product still does what it's supposed to, produce nitric oxide at the optimal levels that it has been, yet at the same time provide better acceptance from the medical community with regards to the amount of vitamin D that's in there. Like up in Canada, before they could even use Proargin Plus in Canada, the Canadian government required them to lower the vitamin D level in their product, that they would not allow Synergy to sell Proargin Plus in Canada unless they lowered the vitamin D3 level in their product. And so that's what they did. And again, the Canadian formulation is highly effective in helping people produce nitric oxide for improved cardiovascular health.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions or comments for me? Okay, thank you. So Donald Clark did the conversion for me, and if his conversion is correct, then it would be 1,000 international units in the UK formula. So hopefully that's correct.
Yes, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So Dan, the 5 UG would be the 5,000.
Yeah, Donald, I'm not sure on that, because I think that would be awfully high for them to do that. I think they would get pushback from the European Union on something like that. So again, my suggestion is for you, Charity, just to call Synergy and find out, exactly what the amount of vitamin, ask them two questions. One, is it vitamin D3? And secondly, what does that amount relate to in international units?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anyone else with any questions or comments before we say goodbye?
Awesome presentation, Dan. Love it.
Thank you, Donald. And again, this PDF I'll make available to everyone on the Tuesday newsletter when it goes out, as well as today's recording. And I'm glad I remembered to turn on the recorder. So you'll have a recording of this, and then this becomes a document that you can also use. Because I want to close with this. Vitamin D is so critically important to people's health. And it's, as you can see from the statistics that were done with regards to the U.S. study, and quite frankly, I would assume that whether it be the U.S. population or populations in other places around the world, a lot of people are vitamin D deficient. Here in the United States, 42% of American adults, but unfortunately, when you look at ethnicity, skin color, 69%. That's over 2/3 of the Hispanic population, and 82%. That's if you were in a room with 100 black people, 82 of those black people would most likely be vitamin D deficient. And just think what would happen if they were vitamin D deficient and the COVID-19 virus was introduced to that group. And that doesn't mean that they would catch the virus, but they would be exposed to the virus. And if they were exposed and the virus was able to enter their system, just the significant health challenges that would occur to that population group. And again, that's one of the other things that has come out with regards to the COVID-19 is that there's people that are asymptomatic, meaning that they have the COVID-19 virus, but they have no symptoms. So they don't know that they carry the virus. So they could unwittingly go into a room of people. Maybe you don't have proper social distancing that they require or ask for. And again, it becomes a huge issue based upon ethnicity or color, skin color, population groups in terms of the outcome, symptom severity, mortality rate. And I come back to this Indonesian study. I mean, it is just stark. 4% versus 88 to 99%. There's no middle ground.
Mm. Wow.
That's how significant the vitamin D level in the bloodstream is with regards to your immune system's ability to help protect you from the COVID, from a negative outcome from the COVID-19 virus. Anyone else with anything before we say goodbye?
Dan,
Yes.
the only thing I would add to that is you go and get a blood test. You request that specifically because generally they don't include a vitamin D test in a blood test.
Yeah, I'm glad
So-
you brought that up, Donald, because you're absolutely correct in that you have to ask for it because it's not regularly done. Maybe out of the research that's coming out with regards to vitamin D, that will become something that will become part of a blood test. But yes, you need to ask for it. And if you can't get it from your physician because your insurance won't cover it, or because your copay is too high, or you've got too high of a deductible, there's places like Life Extension. You can type in Life Extension and go to their website, and they offer a vitamin D test where you pay them. They then coordinate with a local lab for you to go to. The local lab does the blood draw, and then the testing is done, and you get your results back from Life Extension. So there's plenty of ways for you to be able to get your blood test done. And as I tell people, if your blood test for vitamin D shows that you're normal, great. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, if you want to up your supplementation, go ahead and do that. But if you are in the insufficient or deficient category, you need to incorporate a vitamin D3 supplement into your lifestyle. And again, I come back to this thing with regards to our product, the vitamin D product from Synergy Worldwide. I mean, just 2,500 international units on a daily basis is going to cost you 12 cents. If you're sick with the COVID-19 virus, it's going to cost you a lot more. You know, I don't say that from a scare tactic standpoint, but to me, this is one of the easiest and most cost-effective ways for a person to improve their health by getting their vitamin D levels up in their bloodstream by using a product like the vitamin D3 chewable from Synergy Worldwide, or go to a health food store, make sure that it's a chewable vitamin D, see what the international units are for it, and again, if it's listed in micrograms, this document will give you the conversion factor for how to figure it. Thanks, Donald. Anyone else with any final comments before I say goodbye? All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you, Dan.
Thank you, Doc.
Great
You're welcome.
presentation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dan.
You're welcome.
I can use this.
Good.